What's up, coolers, and welcome back to Barca Dream Team. And of course, we're very happy with the big win against Valencia the other night. 5-0, that's an incredible score. But it raises the question of why have we been so inconsistent this season? Because one week we score 7, and then the next week we struggle to score at all. Have managers worked out how to frustrate us? Well, that's the question for today's video, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel. When we're building from the back, we usually benefit from teams coming out to play, leaving space in behind. Most of our best performances actually this season, they've been against the teams with a high defensive line like Bayern in the Champions League. But having said that, we've seen some teams recently cause us problems with really aggressive man-to-man marking. Against Atalanta, Darun was a key player in doing that. And then last weekend we saw Alaves, very physical. They doubled up on Pedri, he was targeted. And wherever he went, he was running into traffic, and then, we lost that link between defense and attack. And by taking Pedri out of the game, Lamine, he had to drop deeper, he had to come inside to pick up the ball. He was trying to drive forward by himself, make runs, and he attempted 11 more dribbles than the previous game against Atalanta. The massive knock-on effect is he's much deeper than we wanted him, and we definitely lose a lot if Lamine doesn't have the same presence in the final third as he usually does. Against Alaves, he only managed one shot, and it was a pretty low XG chance as well. And that's why in the second half, when Frankie came on, we had more security in possession, and Alaves, they dropped off to protect their point. And Pedri, he had more time on the ball, he had more space, he had more influence, and that led to a massive increase in our final third entries from 25 in the first half to 38 in the second. And eventually it was Pedri who was heavily involved in Lewandowski's winning goal too. But usually we've seen more emphasis in using the space in behind, particularly in central areas, and Kubasi, he's been key in that with consistently accurate long balls in behind. Usually it's Lewandowski in the false 9 role, just dropping, drawing the centre-backs out, and then you've got the space there, that's all unlocked. You've got Rafa, Lamine, Gavi, sometimes it's been Ferran as the 10 or Olmo. It's pretty much the same deal though, they're running in there, in behind, and we've scored many goals like that already this season. And that's exactly what happened against Valencia in La Liga. They came out from the first minute, all guns blazing, pressing really high, and they left space in behind, and time again, it was just a long ball through the middle, and then a Barca goal, and before you knew it, we'd put 5 goals past Mamardashvili, and then they decided to drop off. And it was the same deal in the Cup as well the other day. Valencia, they didn't learn their lesson, they were coming at us, and Ferran, he took full advantage of that. He's very capable of filling in for the Lewandowski false 9 role, but Ferran, he gives you a little bit of extra mobility, he's always making runs in behind too, and he's shown that he can thrive in games where we've got space to run into, and we'll come on to Ferran again later. So coming up against high lines or mid blocks, it's not been much of an issue for us. They're our preferred opposition. It's against the low block teams where we've struggled the most, teams who just sit off and defend. Usually after around 60 to 70 minutes, if we still need a goal, the late game strategy becomes really dependent on working the ball into zone 14. Usually Lewandowski comes off, Ferran and Olmo come on, and we see more unpredictability with the back heels, the 1-2s, and we get into zone 14 and then we just unleash the shots from range. And Olmo, he's been excellent in between the lines. When you haven't got much space, that's where he's thrived really. Some of his best performances have actually been against this kind of opposition when you need to move the ball quickly, get into the edge of the box. He's the man for the job. And we've really missed him when he's been injured, but he's made his return now against Valencia and the Copa, so hopefully that's a good sign. And Pablo Torre, he's been a great option too, but Hansi Flick, he doesn't seem to trust him too much, preferring Ferran with his penetrating runs in behind instead. So that's the real problem. We usually struggle against Getafe, Las Palmas, Alaves, Leganés. We can't unlock these tight defenses. It's usually the bottom half teams who prefer to play like that. They bide their time and then hit us on the counter here and there. Very rarely do we come up against a bottom half side like Valencia, who really went for it in the league. And well, that's why we see a massive difference between Barca in the cup competitions versus in La Liga. We're like two different teams, and that explains the inconsistency we've seen this season. But what can we do about it? Because having said all that, the match against Alaves, that was huge. It seemed as though it was another one of those games we could have slipped up, we could have dropped points, but we managed to get a result. When we score 7 and then we only win by 1 goal in the next game, people on the outside, they think we're inconsistent. And what's more important is to stop dropping points against the teams that frustrate us, and against Alaves, that's exactly what we did. And in the Copa, Valencia, they came out with a high line, very aggressive with their press in the opening stages, like we said, and we had space in behind from the start, which we exploited. We enjoyed that. But as we scored, we made it 2, 3, 4, 5. You could see their back line drop off a couple of yards each time. They didn't want the score to get to 7 like last time. And well, that's especially where I think Ferran looked good. Because Ferran, he knows when to drop off, he knows when to push forward, he knows when to arrive in the box, and usually the positioning's always been great, but it's the finishing that's usually the problem, and that's been the common theme across his Barca career, but now he's adding that to his game. He of course got the 3 goals, but the way he drops off, the awareness, the positioning, that was excellent. You know, Ferran was making runs beyond him, the interplay with Rafa was really fluid, the way he kept coming inside, he was creating much more and overloading the central areas. Lamine coming central too with runs into the box. He got a few shots at goal. And I just think that overall, the front 4 in this game, attacking the centre, running at the Valencia defence, we were more dangerous than the other recent games. Is that all down to Ferran? No, but I think he's showing he can give the team something different to Lewandowski. He's a different profile, he's got the form, he's knocking on the door for a starting place, and Flick will really appreciate that, particularly in the games where we're struggling to score.